good morning. Get yourself a cup of coffee. My name is Tom. I come to you from the great state of Maine. Yes, you caught me having another coffee. Well, this is day 10 being here at the cabin. What a week it's been. Boy, we had a lot of snow to deal with when I first got here. I had over 2 feet of snow in the driveway that needed to be cleaned up, especially after the last storm. So I stayed snowed in for at least 4 days. I didn't bother with it. It was just plain enjoyable. You probably saw, I did send out a post with some pictures in it. I made a path from my shop to the cabin. And then I made another path out to the woodshed, one out to the outhouse. And then I have a fire building in the back here. I always get that path out to that too. Now I don't shovel. I'm way too old for shoveling. And I don't really enjoy shoveling if I don't have to. I do have to shovel off the back deck before I do head out of here. But I make a path with a snowblower and all of that. And then it's just plain hang out at the cabin. It's an enjoyable thing to be snowed in. Those of you that do want to own a cabin, it is an enjoyable thing to be snowed in. But what I want to talk about today is off-grid cabins. We see a lot on YouTube, off-grid cabins, survival cabins. I made it through the snowstorm in my off-grid cabin. Well, you wouldn't have much of a cabin if you couldn't make it through a regular old snowstorm here in the state of Maine. It's just a snowstorm. It's not a tornado. It's not a hurricane. It's not a nuclear blast where 50 miles around us it gets knocked down. I am so tired of hearing. And it's a thing on YouTube right now because it seems like it's in absolutely every video. Maybe because we're finally having a regular Maine winter. Maybe that's playing into it. And it's not even a regular Maine winter at this point. It's still very late in coming. I've said this many times over the years. I used to be ice fishing by the 10th of December every year. It was a no-brainer. I could be on the ice by the 10th of December. And it hasn't been that way quite a while. It's just like even this year. We didn't see snow until the end of January. Well, January's our snow month. Outside of, we always talked about the January thaw. That's because December was so cold. It had nothing to do, and January thaw is just the sun came out for a couple of weeks. And now we don't even start to see real cold until mid-January to the end of January. And then by that time, you're really looking at spring. I kind of gotten off on a tangent here, haven't I? But you're kind of looking at spring at that point. Like right now, we're at the end of February. Hey, March is a warm month. Always has been. That's the best time to go ice fishing is in March. Long, sunny days. Temperature rises during the day. Really good. So this calling cabins, I just survived a Maine snowstorm in my survival cabin. I'm so tired of seeing videos like that because they're ridiculous. They are absolutely ridiculous thoughts. You don't have much of a cabin if you can't hunker down for a night and watch it snow. I would say that go back home and don't come to your cabin because you're number one, ridiculous, and number two, you make it sound ridiculous. Now getting back to like the first part of this video was, are we really off grid? No, you're not off grid. Stop saying it. You can say you're off grid, but don't act like you're off grid because you're not. Off grid means you can't drive to your cabin. If you can drive to your cabin, you are on the grid. You use the highway system to get to your cabin. That doesn't make you off the grid. Are you off the grid if you use any propane in your cabin? No, you're not off the grid. You have to go to a propane station, fill up your tanks, and haul them back to your cabin. That makes you part of the grid. How do you get away from that? Wood. You don't need propane. Hey, I love propane. Don't think I don't. I have a propane gas stove. I have gas lights in here, propane lights that light up my cabin. But truly living off grid is not having those amenities. That's not truly off grid is a wood stove that you throw wood into, heat your cabin. Have something else for lighting. Or you go to bed at dark. One of the two. That's off grid. Off grid, you know, granted, every cabin out there, especially back before solar panels, has got gas lights in it. But if you can drive to your cabin and you have gas lights from propane, you're not off grid. You're still on the grid. So many people consider off grid because they aren't plugged into the power company, electricity. If that's the only criteria for off grid, that's really not setting the bar very high. I don't have electricity, you know. Lots of people don't have electricity when the power goes out. You don't say them calling that off grid at that point. Well, that's all you've got. You know, I'm sorry. Another one of them areas that irritates the heck out of me when you're talking off grid, off grid, off grid, off grid. I survived off grid. I survived off grid. Well, you didn't survive anything because you're attached to the grid. This cabin, I love coming here because it's quiet, it's peaceful. But I don't really consider it off grid. I rely on the grid for a lot of things. My groceries, the highway system to be able to drive here, to get up in here. I have a John Deere tractor. I rely on the grid for fuel to run that John Deere tractor. Now, if you were off the highway system and all of this stuff had to be trucked in here on a snowmobile or a four-wheeler, and you were really, really, you know, I watch a lot of Alaska videos, and them guys, some of them are 50 miles out, 100 miles out. The only way in is by flying in. That's truly off grid. That's truly off grid. So, you know, it took me a while to realize that. The more I thought about, the more you think about things while you're here, you realize how much you depend upon the outside world to be able to pull off this kind of lifestyle. You know, without the snowblower or without the John Deere tractor to be able to open this place up, this wouldn't be usable in the winter months. Especially when I first bought the place. Winters have gone downhill since I bought the place as far as the amount of snow. When I first bought this place, if you stepped out into the woods at this time of year, it was a minimum of 6 feet of snow. Minimum. 5, 6 feet of snow was common. You step off of snowshoes and go to your chest. You know, so you go for a snowshoe and poke a stick in, it goes 4 feet, 5 feet down through the snow until you get to the ground. It's only 2 feet now. If you step out into the woods right now, there's only 2 feet of snow. So things have changed quite a bit since I bought this cabin. But anyways, that's kind of my thoughts this morning on living off grid. My problem is I'm just seeing, there's words that are really being abused when it comes to these YouTube videos, and a whole lot of myths that are being spread. I kind of try to be a channel of myth busting, you know, but it's an uphill battle, and it has gotten much worse. since I started this channel, I don't feel that it's going completely the other way. I think it's because of so many people running for the hills, because of everything that's going on in the country, that they're bringing a lot of that thought process with them when they do end up at the cabin. Leave it behind. Leave it behind. You're not off-grid. You're not off-grid. You're not living in a survival cabin. You're living in a cabin. You're not surviving a Maine winter snowstorm. You're surviving a snowstorm. And it doesn't get any more common sense than that. The only thing you've got to survive in the state of Maine in the wintertime is your own common sense. If you come into this place with no common sense at all, zero ability to be able to take care of yourself, my opinion there is stay home. Stay home until you learn the basics of how to take care of yourself. Because there's nothing here that's going to hurt you. If you show up at your cabin, like let's pick on mine. I show up to my cabin, the porch wood box is full. The kindling wood box inside the cabin is full. When I first get here, all I have to do is open the door and build a fire. Within 30 minutes, this place is comfortably warm. That's not surviving. That's having the ability to look ahead, fill my wood box, fill my kindling box, make sure I've got enough dry wood in my woodshed to endure the winter. And even if I didn't, I own a snowmobile, I own a chainsaw, and I have the ability to cut firewood. You're still not surviving just because you're putting wood in the woodshed. You're doing what people have done in the state of Maine since the beginning of time. It doesn't get any clearer than that, whether you live in a house or live in a cabin or go to a cabin or whatever. People have been cutting firewood in this state since the beginning of time. So stop using the term surviving the Maine winter in my cabin and stop saying you're off the grid when you're really not off the grid. And that takes in almost every cabin here in the state of Maine. Because every single cabin that I know of, outside of the ones that are way back in, are truly off-grid. There's a cabin behind this cabin 5 miles. That's off-grid. The only way to it is by boat. I have maintained that cabin for almost 10 years. It's nothing fancy. It's 4 walls. It's a roof. You'll see it in my videos way back in the beginning. Oh, I wouldn't say back. Maybe 2020, 2021. In that area. Maybe 2019. I don't remember when I was last. I go back all the time. It doesn't mean I videotape all the time. That's a truly off-grid cabin. It's a roof. It's a place to get in and out of the weather. If I spent a night there, I would really consider myself surviving a Maine winter night in an off-grid cabin. So, but anyways, that'll wrap that one up. You guys have a great morning. I've got to go split some firewood. I've got to top off my wood box today. Got a couple more errands, chores I want to take care of. My fire building needs straightening up, so I think I'm going to go out there, build a fire in that wood stove, and spend a couple hours out there tidying up my fire tinders and all of that. That's my science room. That's where I set things on fire. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.